I'm here in my kitchen after the flatmates left, and I'll be showing you guys how to make Brazilian white chocolate and pistachio brigadeiros. They've been quite a treat all throughout the year. So first things first, you're going to need a few things. This is regular white chocolate. You're going to need about 100 grams of it. And 150 grams of pistachios, no shells. Doesn't actually matter if it's salty or not, even though try to get the unsalted one. About 100 grams of it I have already chopped into fairly coarse bits, and the other 50 grams I have made into a very fine powder, which we're going to use later on. You'll also need condensed milk, 1 can of condensed milk, and I bought these little white chocolate stars, which are going to come in handy for decoration in the end. And you're also going to need a bit of butter as well. Right, let's get started. Mind you, this isn't the traditional brigadeiro recipe. The traditional one is made with dark chocolate, and there are no nuts on it. This is a small variation I picked up from someone in Brazil who is currently my girlfriend's employer, and who makes brigadeiros as a kind of a small business which is rapidly growing. You can check out her site on the bottom here in the comments section. Okay, first thing we're going to do is grab a pan and open our can of condensed milk and put the whole can in the pan. Right. So brigadeiro was actually created in the 40s in Brazil. Nowadays it's a very popular treat, and it's in every kid's birthday party. There is no birthday party without it. It was created in the 40s in Brazil as part of a political campaign, actually, from a candidate from the UDN, the National Democratic Union. Yeah, that would be the translation. This party was very much against the dictator ruling in Brazil at the time, Getúlio Vargas, and the running candidate was a brigadier in the army, hence brigadeiro, our word for that patent. Now don't throw away your can, because we're gonna need it for a little trick. Now instead just wash it, rinse it off. Now this brigadier, who went by the name of Eduardo Gomes, during his first campaign by UDN, had this dessert created, and it was sold as a form of fundraising for his campaign. Eventually he lost the election to his rival Eurico Gaspar Dutra. However, the practice is quite interesting for fundraising, and we've done it. On one of our cake sales I brought a few, and they were quite a sale. There were a lot of people interested in them. Well, okay, let me wash this. Right, so this is what we're going to do with this. Get your can, your rinsed off can, and put all of your white chocolate into it. And we're going to put that into a second pan, just a little bit of water into it, and we're going to put that into the fire, on the fire. What's going to happen is it's going to boil the water, and the heat of the water is going to heat up the can and melt the chocolate. Instead of having the chocolate directly on the pan, which would cause it to heat up too much and stick to the pan and you'd lose the whole thing. So, let's see. Okay. Now, more on the brigadeiro's story. So yeah, he lost his campaign in the 40s against Eurico Gaspar Dutra. He wasn't elected, although on the months when he was doing that fundraising in Rio, because the capital of the country was Rio back then, the whole fundraising campaign with the desserts, the brigadeiro, they weren't called brigadeiros back then, it spread as a word of mouth sort of thing. So people were talking to each other and saying, you know, have you tried the brigadeiros desserts? Have you tried the brigadeiros sweets? And you know, after a while that kind of got simplified into, have you tried the brigadeiro? And that's how people got to know these things. Of course, there are many other weirder versions of the story, but as far as I can tell, this is as close as it gets to the true version of it. It's boiling pretty quick. Okay. So while our chocolate melts, let's get back to this thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of butter into it. So just a tad. I don't have any exact measures for this, but do a lot of my stuff by eye. And we'll just put it into the fire a little bit, leave it for like 2 minutes until it melts. Just make sure you stir it, and not too much, otherwise the condensed milk will burn and stick to the pan. So right, and well, a little end of our story here, our history lesson. Eurico Gaspar Dutra was the ministry of war for Getúlio Vargas, that dictator I mentioned earlier. Vargas, the dictator, he managed to stay in power for 15 years, from the 1930 to 45, through a number of political maneuvers. And so when elections were done in 45, Eurico Gaspar Dutra won his ministry of war. So in a way, Vargas was out, but he wasn't completely out. And it kind of reminds me of a certain recent president in Brazil. I keep going back to the coincidence of this thing being used, the original version of this thing being used for fundraisers back when it was created in the 40s in Brazil, and this modern version of it being used for fundraisers here in London by art students. Sounds like a interesting coincidence, and I'm all about coincidences. I love them. You gotta keep stirring it, otherwise the condensed milk is going to stick to the bottom of the pan. Now what happens there is that it makes it a lot harder to clean afterwards, and it has an impact on the taste. It isn't quite good. So I'm thinking I'll maybe just turn down the fire a little bit, and we just keep on stirring until the butter is gone. I can still see it there. Meanwhile, our chocolate is going fairly well, already melted. Now this thing's a little bit treacherous, you gotta keep an eye on it, otherwise it really gets out of hand and burns. Now, we're putting all of that melted white chocolate into it. Okay, and stirring it some more. Alright, okay. Right. Okay, and the last part of this, which is pistachios. Lots and lots of pistachios. And we'll keep stirring. Okay, you'll know when to stop because you see right now I'm stirring it and it closes up pretty quickly and doesn't let you see the bottom of the pan. After a while of mixing it, you're going to see that it turns into something slightly more consistent and starts opening up. I mean, you're going to be able to see that bottom of the pan, and that's when you know when to stop. This actually might take a little while, so might take about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes, something like that. That's a lot of stirring, so prepare your arms because you have to endure this. Okay, this is more or less the consistency we're looking for. You see, it gives us the bottom of the pan when we're stirring, so you can see it's a lot more consistent than it was in the beginning, and that's more or less what we want. Now, you can pretty much control this. If you want something that's a bit harder, you just leave it there for a little while longer. Just be careful not to burn it. If you want it a little bit more liquid or, you know, malleable, you leave it a little bit less. But basically, that's it. Nice consistency. Not to mention, my arm's hurting already. Ow. That's a lot of exercise. Whew. Okay, here we go. Okay. Great consistency. Good. Stay there. Now, you take all of this and put it on a plate. And we're going to let it cool down. Let it cool down for for an hour or so. Me, since it's fairly late, I'm going to let it cool down overnight. Just put it on the fridge and pick it up the next day. And we'll take it tomorrow and I'll show you how to do those little balls and the decoration and everything else. And that's it, you can eat. In the meantime, you can get, if you're a mother, you can call your children and give them the spoon. Okay, for the next part of our brigadeiro, remember to wash your hands really well, because we're going to be using a lot of that, a lot of them. I'm particularly scrupulous with the nails. and I've got pretty long ones. Alright. Well, the last part in making our brigadeiro is going to be shaping the brigadeiro. So, remember those chocolate stars and the rest of the really fine pistachio? Okay, we're going to get them out and place them in bowls or plates like this, and we're going to use them in a while. Okay, so what we're going to do is get a little bit of your brigadeiro, which by now is supposed to be a fairly consistent mass once it's cooled down for a while. And okay, so we're going to get that and shape it into a little ball with our hands. That's why it's important to clean your hands. Okay, so just start rolling them up like this. And you notice that as you start doing this, some of that butter we used in making the brigadeiro is actually going to come out in your hand. So this actually makes it easier to roll the next ones. And you also get to degrease some of the brigadeiros. Alright, so once you've got a fairly regular little ball, we're going to roll it on one of these two things. Now, the reason why we're doing this is fairly logical. The brigadeiro in itself is a fairly sticky substance. It's kind of a toffee-like thing, see? So if you set it down on any kind of surface, it's going to stick to the surface, and after a while, it's going to be really hard to get it out of there. And if you try to pull it, it's going to stretch and lose its round shape. So we're doing this because by covering it with something, you're creating a kind of layer of separation between it and whatever surface you're putting it on, so that it doesn't stick to the surface. Alright, so you can use basically anything. I chose these two because they were the ones that were more close at hand, but you can choose any kind of wacky little covering or wacky little design you choose. Your local supermarket's going to have a whole bunch of these, and some of them quite creative. Well, let's roll this one on the pistachio first. So here we go. And make sure you cover it quite evenly so that there's no little sticky spot left. And voila! A pistachio covered brigadeiro which doesn't stick to the surface. Alright, I'm going to do another one with those little stars, which are something that I've never tried before. Seem quite nice. You know, when I started doing this, when I first came around with a little nicely packed box of brigadeiros like this, a colleague of mine looked at me and was kind of amazed at seeing a guy with a little box of desserts, chocolatey desserts that he had done himself. It was kind of an interesting reaction to me, because it felt like I wasn't supposed to, you know? It felt like guys are okay doing barbecue and that sort of greasy, heavy cooking, but when it comes to dainty little detailed desserts like this, it's weird. I don't know exactly why. Anyway, it kind of felt interesting as that sort of male stereotyping. Alright, let me try the little stars. And these are white chocolate stars, which go well with the white chocolate in the brigadeiro recipe that we did. But you can get virtually any color of anything on the supermarket stores. Alright, so the stars are a little bit messy, I think, but actually look quite interesting. You just need a little bit of extra care and detailing. And there you go. One star covered brigadeiro that also doesn't stick to the surface. Haha. Okay. And there you have it. Alright, I'm gonna keep on going with this plate here, and luckily we'll have a bunch more stuff to sell for our fundraiser. So see you guys at the bake sales. Good luck with your brigadeiros.